Recording live from the ARC studios, welcome to the Sustainability Podcast. Our goal is to provide engaging discussions on a broad range of topics regarding cybersecurity, sustainability, supply chain management, plus much more. For more information and to get into contact with us, visit us at arcweb.com.
Welcome again to another episode of the Sustainability Podcast. I'm Jim Frazer, Vice President of Smart Cities here at ARC Advisory Group. And I'm very pleased today to be joined by Alejandro Burgana, co-founder of OBE Power. Welcome today, Alejandro. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, Jim. Thank you for having me today.
That's great. I did meet Alejandro at our ARC annual conference last February, and hopefully we'll have you get back as a speaker again this February. I know both of us are residents here of South Florida, and I know about some of your endeavors. But for those of us in the audience that don't know you or OBE Power, let's just get started with a simple question. Who is Alejandro Burgana, and how did he come to this industry?
Well, sure. I'm for the vast majority of my professional life, I've been involved. I'm as a background, I'm an engineer, also has a master's degree in business from New York University. But at heart, I'm an entrepreneur and an engineer, and I like to bring solutions to life and try to, using also my formal education in business, to build business models around those solutions. So, years ago, I was first involved in the production and development of biofuels. After being very concerned about, the environment and try to bring like a carbon neutral solution, particularly to the transportation section, which is a sector like around logistics that I feel passionate about. Mm-hmm. But then that a business didn't take off, to be honest with you. And actually, that was a good lesson learned because, sometimes when you fail at something, you take one step back and say, well, what happened here and how can I make it better? One way to make it better, that was, between the years of 2010, 11, I was also learning about electric vehicles, which is like not a carbon neutral, but a transportation solution that has zero emissions. And that kind of, hit me really hard. It's like, maybe this is the way. And I started by, trying to get my hands into one of these electric vehicles. In fact, I happened to have the second Nissan Leaf that was available in South Florida at the time. It was a total, conversation maker, like very attractive, people pleaser. Everybody was asking me to roll down the window and asking me, is that a solar? Is that an electric? Like, how do you plug it in? How is the experience? So it was actually a pleasant experience, even though it was the first generation, only 75 miles of range. Imagine that. And then when I drove that vehicle and I saw the torque and the cleanness and the convenience and how easy it was to drive it, it was like, well, this is perfect. Let's try to build a business around the solution of charging those electric vehicles. Then it took me a couple of years to figure out how to do it better. We started becoming a dealer of charging station solutions, and we partnered with some of the best companies in the industry at the time. But we were trying to sell charging stations even before electric vehicles were here. So we were doing a lot of pitches, most of them educational. People were curious to know about the future of transportation, but we were trying to make a living. We were trying to make a present out of that. And that, sales pitch without results, without sales, actually didn't take us very far. So that's when we decided to go back again to the drawing board, the whiteboard, and say, well, how do we build a business solution? If people are not buying charging stations because it's not a top priority for them, and we clearly see the growth and the penetration. And at the time, the penetration was about 0.5% of new vehicles sold. It was nothing. It was like at 0.5%, you don't even know whether the technology will survive or will finally be adopted. So, but what we saw is that every month the number of electric vehicles sold in the United States was growing and was larger and was closely or quickly approaching the 1%, which is considered a point of no return for the adoption of a new technology. So we were like, well, if the market are not buying this, how about if we invest in properties? How about if we actually deploy these charging solutions at no cost in places where we anticipate great levels of demand and utilization? And that's how the concept of electric vehicle charging as a service was born. That's how we created, that's how we conceptualized it. And today it is the fastest growing solution. And I will say we are the benchmark of charging as a service solutions in our markets.
Wow, that really is fascinating. Thank you for that. Can you give us an outline for those who might not be cognizant of the EV charging just domain today? We know there's Electrify America and there's Tesla and there's a variety of others out there, ChargePoint. But where are chargers being delivered? What's the business energy around that today? Can you just describe like the ecosystem of EV charging today?
Sure, but before we get into the chargers, allow me to begin with the cars.
Oh, go ahead.
The number of electric vehicles today in the market is about 2.5 million. That is roughly 1% of total cars in the US, which is like about 250 million. But in terms of new vehicles sold, today, remember that figure like 0.5 and 1%? Now it is 6%. That is the current penetration of electric vehicles in new vehicles sold. And that penetration is projected to grow all the way to 30% by 2030, by the end of this same decade. So imagine the opportunity for expansion and growth. Now, the number of electric vehicles is also projected to be about around 30 million by the end of this decade, by 2030. And in order to charge all of these vehicles, you need about one charger per 5 or 6 or 7 EVs out there. So we're talking about 6 million, between 5 and 6 million public chargers that are required to be, around the country in order to meet the charging demand for all of these vehicles. The number, now going to the specific part of your question, what is the current situation with the charging industry? Today we have about 120,000 public charging ports in the country. Some people still believe that charging stations are nowhere to be found, and perhaps they are looking at the ground places. But if you want to compare that 120,000 figure with the number of gas stations, to our surprise, it is the same. The number of gas stations in the United States is 120,000. So imagine, but people still like, well, but if the number is the same, where are they? Well, they are not at gas stations, that's for sure. Usually those charging stations are located, at rental communities, at parking lots. Where people park their vehicles, condominiums, workplaces, shopping malls, universities, hospitals, stadiums, and so on. So it is a kind of a different mentality, because now when you charge a vehicle, actually you have the convenience to find a charging station where you park and leave your vehicle for most of their life. 80% of the life of a car is in the parking lot. It's not being driven, it's actually parked. And that's what you get to charge them.
Got it. So, what are the obstacles then to supporting we're ramping up? I heard now electric vehicles are 6% of the vehicles purchased today. That's going to grow. What are the obstacles in deploying those public chargers? And I might just give out my first initial thoughts are, as a deployer of an EV charger, of a public EV charger, how do I know a location is a good one that's going to drive revenue for me?
Well, we have developed an entire algorithm to try to identify not only those locations, but also the exact or the correct amount of charging points that you should deploy at each one of these locations. So that's kind of the secret sauce of building a business, a sustainable and scalable business around the charging activity. In order, and of course, to get to that, we keep fine tuning and improving that formula and that algorithm. But to get there, also we had to make a lot of mistakes. There were, back in 4, 5, 6 years ago, we were either over deploying, like installing more charging points than required at certain locations, or even deploying at charging locations and waiting to see who's going to use it, and nobody stopped there to use them. So you kind of used all of these errors and all of these mistakes to say, well, maybe this is not the avenue. Maybe let's try that road or that different direction. And just by trying to analyze the utilization data is how we get to get a better understanding of the charging behavior, the charging patterns, and actually the preferred locations where the actual charging occurs.
What about other obstacles? Does your algorithm address the size of the charger? Are they all DC to DC chargers? Are they level 2? What other obstacles might there be for someone deploying a charging network?
Well, first of all, we need to have an understanding of the difference between a DC fast charger and a level 2 charger. There is the tendency to believe that the faster is newer and better, and that is not always the case, actually. DC fast charging is the possibility to quickly bring the battery of your vehicle up to 80% capacity in a few minutes, sometimes a time that is comparable to fueling a gas tank. But it's not advisable for that to be your regular charging practice, like to your everyday charging. You require DC fast charging when you are commuting between towns or cities, when you are taking a road trip, when you are visiting a friend or relative who lives, let's say, more than 100 miles away from you. Those are the cases when you need to fast charge your vehicle on the go, on the road. But for daily charging, L2 is sufficient. And usually the average time people use to top their batteries is anywhere between 2 to 3 hours today. That may think at first impression, for somebody who's not used to charging a vehicle, it sounds like a lot of time, but in reality, you are never sitting and waiting for your vehicle, because that charging occurs while you are living your life, while the vehicle is parked and you are either doing this podcast or working at the office, or sleeping at your house, or having dinner with your friends and relatives, or just having a tennis match, or watching a movie at the cinema.
Very, very true. Your focus is passenger car charging, correct? Or do you get involved with fleets at all?
We have started with passenger vehicles, and we are big at that, at dense urban environments. But now with some, we're also working with municipalities. Actually, we're working with the largest municipality here in the state of Florida, also with the city of Fort Worth in Texas, expecting to hear from Georgia and other municipalities in the next couple of weeks. And those municipalities and also some corporations, now they are actively, upgrading their fleets of vehicles to electric. And they are giving us the opportunity also to present and extend a solution to charge those fleets of electric vehicles. And actually, that opens a whole new branch and a whole new industry for us, because the needs for charging and the kind of reporting and tools and conveniences yet you can offer to a fleet manager are also elevated when you create a solution for fleet charging. You can even present them a solution that is based on the mileage rather than the cost of energy. And for a fleet manager, that's like a dream come true, because fueling is usually the most variable and unpredictable item in their costs. for when they are trying to estimate the budget. But if you can offer now fleet managers the possibility to anticipate and to budget their fueling cost based on the mileage of each one of the vehicles, whether it's a light fleet of vehicles or heavy duty, they are, for them, is like a no-brainer. It's like an ideal dream solution that now they can actually implement and better budget and control the efficiency of the entire fleet.
Well, that's a fascinating insight, and I see where you're evolving from using the algorithms you've developed around the relatively simpler passenger car deployment on a public parking lot to 50 or 100 school buses or things like that. In that domain, there are other obstacles. Have you gotten involved or have a perspective of if I am charging 50 school buses at night, I might need a new substation from the electric utility? Correct?
Well, at the beginning, you get the impression that you need a total installed capacity to fully charge all the buses simultaneously and at the same time. The reality is that when you see the total capacity in the batteries of these buses, and actually, and you get to analyze the route that each one of them, travels every day, then and the average energy consumption per mile. I mean, same way you have like MPGs or mile per gallon in a regular vehicle. A similar concept happens with electric vehicles. You have like a kilowatts per mile, and or miles per kilowatt of battery capacity. I'm sorry, the other way around. So if you analyze the routes, the capacity on the batteries, and then you realize that each bus maybe will need to charge probably a couple of times a week, not every night. You don't need to top the battery. And if each one of them charges probably once or twice a week, then you only need to have an installed capacity for, let's say, 20% of all of these buses rather than 100%. Then on top of that, those, using the same example of school buses are working like during the first shift in the morning when they need to pick up kids and then drop it in the school, and then another run in the afternoon, like bringing kids back home. But in between those times and maybe after the afternoon shift, these buses can also be used as a mobile power storage unit in order to resell some of the excess battery back to the grid. And by doing so, they can also help minimize the power cost of the school or the location where they are connected or plugged in, or also can help stabilize the electric grid from surges in electricity during peak demand hours. So actually, that's a very interesting solution to keep stabilizing the electric grid while providing the energy needs during the charging time, and also you can return some energy when it's needed the most for the electric grid.
Yeah, Alejandro, that was one of my later questions. It was going to be about the vehicle to grid communications, and how far away are we from my buying power at an OBE Power charger in the afternoon, or actually buying power at home in the evening, and then selling power through your network in the afternoon when I park in downtown Miami or Dallas or Fort Worth.
Well, the good news is that we are already working in developing that solution for the drivers. The technology exists today. We still, but there are many barriers for that, adoption. You need to have vehicles that are fully capable of V2G. Like right now, I believe Lucid, Ford, Volkswagen is coming, and Nissan are ready to do it. Tesla, we remain expectant to see when they are going to make the announcement for bi-directional capabilities. In short words, vehicles need to be ready. You need to deploy bi-directional chargers that are capable of charging vehicles, let's say during the morning, and then to trade energy back from the battery back to the grid in the evening when energy is more expensive. And also you need to have a legal and an industry framework where utility companies are willing to participate and buy power from in bulk from charging companies. So we are actively working in developing that business solution. We expect to be ready to implement it in the next 2 to 3 years. But the best part of that is that drivers like yourself will be able to trade energy and offset portion of your fueling cost. Let's say that you charge in the morning and you pay, I don't know, around 30 cents per kilowatt hour in the morning to charge. But in the evening, you can sell a portion of that power that is stored in your battery at 40, 45, 50 cents per kilowatt hour. So actually you are making a profit of some of the energy that is stored in the battery of your vehicle. With that, you can offset and reduce your average fueling cost. So actually is a quite benefit, and you will be able to do that with the convenience of the app, the OBE powered app in your cell phone.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Isn't one of the obstacles there the allowed discharge cycles of my battery in my EV? That I believe there are some manufacturers, I don't want to name any, but you're only allowed so many discharge cycles for your battery. So, or more succinctly, I cannot discharge my battery 100% every day. It will void my warranty.
It will never be, it's not planned to be 100%. It's only the excess energy that is stored in their battery. The excess energy is considered the energy that you don't need to get back home or to reach your planned destination. So let's say that, and I stopped seeing you.
I'm still here.
Okay, good. Thank you for confirming that. By excess energy, we mean, like, let's say you need 40% of your battery to run all your errands and go to work and visit your friends, relatives, to pick up your kids, anything you need to do over the course of a day. The other 50 or 60% is the excess, and that portion you can trade at the end of one specific date if you want. That is totally optional. You will never drain your battery to 100 to zero, because I will agree with you. I mean, that will be a bad for that will accelerate the degradation of the battery, I think.
So there could be a scenario, perhaps with current battery technology, or maybe with future battery technology, that where I may not use my car for a few days. It's home. I'm working at home, and I could solely use it to accumulate power in the evening and sell it back at 3 p.m.
Either that, or perhaps to as a source of energy for your home.
That's
so
true.
You are
That's
getting
true
yourself independent from the grid. So you stop consuming from the utility company, and you are actually providing energy from your vehicle to your home.
What's fascinating is I recently completed a market research study here at ARC on advanced metering infrastructure, and in AMI 2.0 electric meters, there now is the development of having a second and even a third metering chip in the meter. The second or third metering chip, the first, of course, is to meter the energy usage in your home. The second would connect to your EV charger, so it would be a standalone port monitoring that. And the third is for your PV rooftop photoelectric energy generation facility.
Okay.
So it's interesting how that's aggregating to what's often now a Linux smart meter that has an app store that can manage these kinds of things.
Interesting.
Just as an aside.
Yeah, right now, I believe that I'm doing all of that with one meter that goes both ways. But yes, I will love to have more analytics into the generation, storage, or consumption of energy in my own house.
Yeah, I mean, some of the, I know that chargers do communicate a tremendous amount of information. Some of the meters, it'll be interesting to see how the meters interact with the chargers. These newer or next generation meters, frankly, one of the most fascinating applications that they run for me is waveform analysis that can look into your home and decide, is your refrigerator running? How about this light switch, the air handler, and anything else? And similarly, with a little bit of capacitive coupling to get over the transformer outside your house, it could look all the way up and do some remote diagnostics into the substation in a way that wasn't possible before. So that's fascinating.
Yeah, I agree. We find all of that fascinating, and the more data that we can collect from these smart technologies, the better to make smart decisions about how to implement newer solutions that will be more convenient, that will elevate our standard of life, and also reduce the cost of living and the cost of energy to all of us.
So OBE Power, let's delve into a little bit. Is there a preferred EV charger that you deploy, or do you simply deploy the best of breed in a particular location? How does that work?
Well, we work with best-in-class chargers from different brands, and actually we are, we have partnership agreements with the best-in-class brands in the industry, and by best-in-class we define chargers that are durable, reliable, that prove to be durable and reliable over the course of many, many years. Some of them have already went through hurricanes, which is something that is quite important here in South Florida, to give you an example. And not only that, but also the companies are well-funded, well-established. They offer great customer support, logistics, and also they are there to pretty much to offer support for the development of the partnership. There are multiple brands out there, and some of them from names and origins that we have never heard of. And that's actually a problem that has turned into the industry. And sometimes when you see negative press and bad reviews about people complaining about doing trips on electric vehicles and not being able to charge because they arrive at a destination, and some of these chargers were broken, damaged, poorly maintained, etc., that is not a reflection of the entire industry. That is perhaps a reflection of either a brand of chargers or a charging network that is doing a poor job at maintaining and deploying charging stations. Since we are implementing the concept of charging as a service, our only source of revenue is not in the sale of the project or the sale of the equipment. Our only source of revenue is in the sale of charging sessions. If we are not servicing the public and people are not connecting and plugged into our stations, we don't make any money. So that's why we need to deploy smart. We need to deploy the correct charging equipment and the right amount of charging plugs or outlets per location, so people feel motivated to continue using us and recommending us and actually expanding with our network to go to other places. And it's not only the charging technology, but also it's the entire ecosystem. We recently finalized a roaming agreement with ChargePoint, which is one of the largest, by far largest charging networks in the country. And now people using the app from OBE Power should be able to find and activate charging stations all over the country, US and Canada. So it's not only that you will use our chargers in either state of Florida or Texas or Georgia, but now you can go all the way to Alaska, if you will, if you're planning to do so, by using our smart app. So it's the combination of the charging technology, the support, maintenance of this equipment, and supported by the information technology and the convenience of the app that actually provides a good experience for the drivers, and people feel motivated to continue using and finding and locating your chargers along your network.
Now, I'll attest to that, Alejandro. ARC here, I led a team that created a market research study on electric vehicle charging systems. And it's arguably the most comprehensive that's out there today. And the supplier list is well in excess of 100. I think it's 150, 175 suppliers. many of those do not, I would argue, do not have the full complement of all the support services.
Yes.
Certainly, the cloud-based app that works, a reliable physical electromechanical charger with its microprocessor and logic that sits there out in the field and works, and the staff to go and address things if invariably something does happen. Someone backs into a charger with their car or something like that. So it's interesting that the requirements of quality and reliability are only getting higher.
Yes.
And for me, maybe this isn't a good example, but I like the idea of a smartphone. You get your new smartphone. It's a very sophisticated device, but you take it out of the box. It has no directions. You find the power button and it works. It just works.
Yes, it should be like that. All technologies that we interact with should be like that because, the iPhone or any smartphone, they're getting used to that. So you cannot expect people to become experts in using, in our case, charging stations. It should be something that is easy to implement, kind of intuitive, that people simply like activate the session using the smart app, then plug it into the vehicle and leave. That's it. That's how much involvement you want to have with that particular technology. But at the same time, it is important to realize that using the example of the iPhone, you are the sole owner and user of your smartphone, right? In the case of charging stations, they are for the public use, and some people use it well, other people abuse them, not so well. People like don't bring the charging port back to the locking holster. They leave it on the ground, this and that. So that's why it is important to work with the most reliable, durable, stronger charging station out there, and the one that offers that cable retracting system, the possibility to be fully connected to the cloud, to have a system to report and diagnose red flags where something is not properly communicating, that have multiple points of sensors, and to detect and kind of anticipate any failures so you can reboot these stations remotely, or if the problem is not fixed remotely, then you can dispatch a technician to with a specific code to take care of that particular problem before the customers actually notice that there is something not going entirely well with that particular station. So that's the kind of after sales solution maintenance and programs that we implement. And in our experience, that has proven to be one of the biggest differentiators compared to other charging networks out there.
Well, no, I could see that, and I'm sure you have the same experience as I do. I have another analog that on my phone here in South Florida, I probably have 6 different parking applications.
Sure.
And I have to pick where am I? Which one am I using? Is it pay by park by phone, way to park, or whatever?
Correct.
The roaming and interoperability that you mentioned is really a very powerful feature. And that a bit leads me into, can you comment about some of the recent news about charging plug, the developments regarding charging plugs? Ford and General Motors have embraced a Tesla design. And what does that mean to you?
Well, actually, we believe that is one of the most important and beneficial things that have happened to our industry in the last during the course of this year or the last 6-7 months. The reason why is because in Asia, China, and Europe, you have charging standards. Let's begin with Europe. In Europe, the charging standard for DC fast is a CCS, or the combo port, which is the same port that pretty much all electric vehicles except for Tesla has for here installed the inlet for DC fast charging. If you get a vehicle from Ford, GM, or Hyundai, Kia, BMW, Mercedes, etc., they all have the CCS port. And some of them used to have even a third option, the Nissan and the Mitsubishi, which was the CHAdeMO, which is already disappearing. So when you go from level 2, which we all use the standard J1772 plug, which is a standard plug that is good for all electric vehicles, including Teslas, with the little adapter. When you move from level 2 to DC fast, that's where you find a problem. Multiplicity of different ports and standard protocols or charging protocols, and that was actually a problem in the industry. Instead of having I will say the industry standard, the automobile standards like SAE to create, this is going to be the North America or the US standard. Actually, we have a market standard right now, which used to be called the Tesla plug, and now they are the Tesla actually the North America charging standard, the NACS port, and it's going to be technically named the J, I believe it's 3600 or something along these figures. So that will solve that specific problem because, when you are driving electric, in the past, you had to look for the DC fast charging network that has the same plug as your vehicle. So imagine if you buy a regular car that can only be fueled at a BP or a Shell station, but not an ExxonMobil. That's crazy. It's unthinkable today, right? Well, same was happening or still happens with the electric vehicle industry. The announcement of GM and then Ford and then GM and then Mercedes and Hyundai, Kia and all the other car manufacturers, including Lucid, to pledge and adopt and implement the NACS port is actually a great solution that will eliminate barriers of adoption, will make it easier for all of us by having a singular standard, so people will feel more invited to adopt electric vehicles. And that's actually used to be an excuse for people not to drive electric, because they say, well, I don't want to charge in this particular network, or I feel like I'm trapped only within my city limits. I cannot go to a city that is 5-6 hours of driving away from me because I don't know if the charging network is reliable enough for me to take the trip. That problem is being solved by the adoption of a common plug or a charging standard, and that will benefit the entire industry, not only the OEMs, but also the charging networks. In our case, we are mostly with level 2 charging at high dense urban locations where people live, work, play, and learn. That's actually where the vast majority of the daily charging activity occurs. Over 90% of the daily charging activity occurs where people work or live. Those are entirely the first two main places for charging activity. And you only go DC fast when you need to go out of city. That happens maybe once a month. But for your daily charging, level 2 is quite enough. And we believe that some people say, well, what technology is going to persist and win in the near future? Actually, we strongly believe that the two complement each other, because level 2 charging is quicker, easier to deploy. You can deploy a level 2 charging solution in just let's say 10 to 12 weeks compared to 10 to 12 months that it takes to deploy a DC fast charging center, and also for a fraction of the cost. And then the running and operational costs are also a fraction of it. So for that reason is that we keep expanding our charging network faster and smarter and more efficient at the current time. And then, using data, utilization data, we will continually upgrade that charging network where needed and for the right amount of charging and power output that it is required.
So from a more commercial aspect, Alejandro, if I am the operator or owner of a facility where people work, live, learn, or play, at what size what's the sweet spot for your customers?
We would like to begin with, let's say that for locations that has more than 300 parking spaces, and we begin with, let's say, 2% of total parking spaces to be fully electrified and with charging stations. That is plenty to charge, I will say, more than 20 to 25 electric vehicles that currently park and regularly visit that particular office building or condominium. That's plenty. People usually think, we have we conducted a survey. We have 20 drivers in our property, so we need 20 chargers. It's like, wait, no, you don't need 20 because not all the vehicles will be charged every time, every single day. You only need a fraction of it. So those who need to charge can be able to find enough plugs for them to do it, the charging, when they need it, which is perhaps twice a week.
How near are we, or where are we on the build out continuum? Are we still at the beginning of building out these networks, or do most 300 and plus parking areas already have 6 chargers?
We are already in the second phase, what we call organic growth. So some of these locations that we did 3-4 years ago, they already reach a certain level of utilization that they're asking for more. What happened is that every time we deploy charging stations at a specific location, within a year, the number of EVs doubles. And then the following year, it doubles again. So it is important that when we deploy charging stations, we deploy capacity enough to allow for future growth, to continue expanding and adding more charging stations in the near future. That occurs usually, for when we started our business, it was like for the first 4 or 5 years, you need to add more chargers. Now every other year, we keep adding more chargers to these same locations because the population and the number of electric vehicles grows.
So an increasing amount of your business is adding new chargers to existing locations.
That's a portion of it. And then, of course, continue conquering and finding new locations that qualify and meet our criteria for new deployments.
So the criteria is 300 spaces. Are there other criteria in terms of turnover of cars in the parking lot, or does it matter to you if it's long-term parking at the airport or if it's a gas station?
Well, funny enough, we don't go after gas stations, or some people will we have received multiple proposals and ideas to deploy chargers at a gas station. We actually believe that, considering how long it takes to charge right now with level 2, which is, let's say, between 2 to 3 hours, who's going to leave a vehicle there at a gas station? Or even if you are DC fast charging, that it takes, let's say, 15, 20 minutes, no one wants to either go or be seen at a gas station. You prefer to simply go to the shopping mall, plug it in, and have dinner or get your groceries or something and do something else and not sit inside your car while it charges, right? So for those reasons, we always try to keep the driver on top of our criteria, what drivers want to do, where drivers would like to find chargers, and what we would like to be doing while charging their vehicles. And the answer is always nothing, like everything but being inside the car. They would rather be doing something else with their lives. And with that premise is that we find locations where the dwell time is over an hour. And those locations, if they're big enough and they get the right amount of visitors or residents or regular people like going to these places, then we will seriously consider deploying at those locations.
Okay, so Alejandro, we've had a broad conversation today. What do you see for the future?
I see plenty of growth. Actually, the industry is projected to grow more than 30 times from now until the 2030. I see increased competition. A lot of companies are waking up and trying to copycat or do something similar or sometimes better. So we need to work really hard to maintain our advantage over competitors and to maintain always an edge. So it is essential that we continue improving our deployment processes, criteria, enhancing our partnerships with our technology providers, and at the same time to make sure that we continue meeting and exceeding the needs of our customer base. That's essential because at the end, we are doing it for them to accelerate and facilitate the adoption of electric vehicles, to make it a pleasure infrastructure to make it a quite convenient that every time people, switch to electric and start charging with us, it's like, what took me so long? That's the kind of the comments that we expect to hear from them. It's like, how could I wait so long to do this? I feel better, relieved, liberated. I don't never have to go to a gas station ever again. And my car provides a better driving experience, cleaner, cheaper. And I don't even need to go to the repair shop because no maintenance is required on these vehicles. It's quite simple and convenient. So we are adding solutions to accelerate the adoption of all of these conveniences for a better lifestyle and for a cleaner environment. Because at the end, it's all about reducing the carbon footprint from transportation, helping our environment, and try to prevent or delay the effects of global warming, which is what it is all about.
Wow, that was great. We only have a few minutes left. So is there anything that you haven't mentioned that our audiences should be aware of?
Well, sure. I will begin with people like, let's say that the penetration is 6%. That means that 94% of people are still buying regular vehicles. And so give it a chance. I mean, consider open, try to think like all the conveniences that we have, discussed during this conversation, and try to put in perspective not only the benefits for the environment, but also how cooler, simpler, cheaper your life will be if you drive electric. Some people still believe that, well, maybe I'm not ready to fully commit. Perhaps I go to a plug-in hybrid. A plug-in hybrid is not the right solution. You have a vehicle with a gasoline engine and an electric motor, with a tank of gas or fuel and a battery. So it's twice the weight, twice the technology, twice the amount of things that could break down and require maintenance and repair. So it's better to go electric. Average range for electric vehicles today is in excess of 250 miles per charge. The good ones deliver, and the expensive one delivers all the way to 400 miles per charge. So that's plenty to run your daily life and to take your trips and go out during the weekends. That's plenty. Trust me, I've gone all the way to New York and Texas driving electric. It's a great experience and no limits. Actually, all the charging happens during pit stop, where we need to go to the restroom or, to have a slice of pizza or coffee or donut while we, continue our trip. So no issues whatsoever. And then, of course, there are some myths around the industry, like electric vehicles are more expensive. That used to be true maybe 5 years ago, not today. Today, you can buy, a decent and a really good electric vehicle that delivers more than 250 miles per charge in the average of in the neighborhood of $35,000. There are great incentives from the federal administration, like $7,500 rebates for people earning less than $300,000 a year for the first electric vehicle. So that's a great incentive. Also, car companies, they are coming with additional incentives like 2 years of free charging in different charging networks. So all of these incentives are worth mentioning. You also, here in South Florida, you get to bypass or to drive on HOV lanes without having to pay toll if you drive electric. What a convenience. I know people who spend more like $150 a month on toll charges. So when you drive electric, you are exempt from those charges. So, I mean, there are so many points to consider that I will invite everyone in your audience, in our audience today, to consider driving electric, to adopt these technologies, and for a better and cleaner future for all of us.
Wow. Well, Alejandro, I want to thank you for joining us today. But before we go, can you share your contact information so that anyone who's listening in can connect with you?
Absolutely. Our company name is OBE Power. The URL is obepower.com. So you can visit our website, and there are plenty. You can also visit us in social media like Facebook or Instagram, also with OBE Power. If you need to contact us, please send us an email to sales@obepower.com or support@obepower.com in case you find a charging station that is not performing to its top capacity. And we will happily talk to you and consider bringing our charging as a service solution to your communities, to your workplace. And that will be a pleasure for us to continue expanding the network.
Well, once again, our guest today has been Alejandro Burgana, co-founder of OBE Power. Alejandro, thank you again. And we look forward to seeing you sharing new developments about EV charging in the next few months and years. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. It's always a pleasure.
Have a great day.
You too. Take care.